Welcome, everybody, to this afternoon's panel From Census to Solution. We're going to kick things off first with a video before we introduce ourselves.
Nashville is like no other. The Greater Nashville Music Census set new national records in all of the following: respondents, percentage employed in the music industry, average annual music income, total annual music income, average number of events per venue, and total number of events. The census also revealed that when it comes to being Music City, we mean all Music City. Just look at the genre representation and the gender representation. On the other side of the coin, our industry's racial diversity lags behind our cities and commands attention for improvement. The census also revealed what many already feel daily: Nashville is becoming unaffordable. Rising costs of living was the number one career concern for creative, and stagnant pay number two. Parking costs and policies were the number one qualitative complaint. Is unaffordability driving our community out of the city? 30% of respondents reported living in a surrounding county. So how do we change all of that? By first demanding a seat at the table. 73% of venues and presenters reported seeking an advocate inside local government. 79% wish to be a part of economic development conversations. It's clear Music City would benefit from making room at the table for the music community. Until it does, it may remain out of harmony. So what can we do about it? Prioritize, invest, develop. We must push for music-friendly policies that address issues like parking, affordable housing, and tax incentives. We must invest in Tennessee's new live music fund. We must form strategic partnerships between metro, tourism, and industry to lift up and preserve our local and diverse music scene. And we must create a workforce path for everyone to access Nashville's unparalleled musical opportunities. The only way we do this is together. Interested in being a part of these solutions? Explore the full census data dashboard and sign up to stay involved at musiccitycensus.com.
All right. So, data, how about it for data, right? Everybody, a little,
I need data.
The five of us up here are on the steering committee here for the Greater Nashville Music Census, and we've had the great challenge, task, and honor of dissecting this massive treasure trove of data and communicating it in a digestible way to everybody. So we wanted to start with the most digestible way that we think people are consuming these days, which is video. And we're going to dive deep into each of those right now. First, I'll introduce everybody here. My name is Jamie Kent. I am a singer-songwriter and founder of a company called Backstage Strategies that does communications and government relations specific to the music industry. To my right is Eric Holt, assistant professor of music business at Belmont University and founder of the Love Noise Group. To his right is Kelly Wahlberg, VP of Communications for the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. To her right, Chris Cobb, founder of Bonafide Live and president of the Music Venue Alliance Nashville. And at the end of the table is Dave Pomeroy, president of the Nashville Musicians Association. So everybody, the format we're going to do today is sort of like a hybrid panel presentation because there's so much data. We didn't want to just spew it at you. We want you to be able to see it, hear it, process it in a few different ways. And the way we really broke this down was by 5 headlines. And that's what we're going to each dive into today. They are: Nashville is like no other, all Music City, unaffordable with an emphasis on the AF, out of harmony, and a seat at the table. Now, there are probably 10 other stories hiding in the data that we are looking forward to the community diving in and finding those stories and telling those stories. These are just the first 5 that we thought were compelling and that might garner some attention and lead to solutions that impact our lives here in Nashville in the music ecosystem here. So to kick it off on the first headline, Nashville is like no other, we're going to flip it down to that side of the table and let Dave Pomeroy kind of introduce why this is important to him and what Nashville is like no other means in terms of the data.
So sorry to interrupt, Dave and Jamie. Are we doing Q&A after each section?
Yeah, good
Okay,
call.
okay.
Good call.
Just wanted to check.
Yeah, this is an intimate group. We can pretend like this is a living room where we are just hanging out. And after each section slide headline, we'll pause and do a few minutes of Q&A if anybody has a question about that data, so that we don't get to the end and you've forgotten about what that was, because I know this is a lot to process.
And then, one more. Sorry, Dave. Could I see a show of hands for if you live and/or work in?
Taking my gig, dude.
Were you gonna do that?
It's a census.
Never mind.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna shut up, man. Really, can we do it now?
Yeah, we
I'm just curious who, like if we're in the city or if we've come from other places. So if you live or work in Nashville, okay.
All right.
Most of us.
All right.
Maybe 70%.
And it's okay if you don't.
I'll finish my census.
Sorry.
Okay.
If you're not from Nashville, are you involved in the industry? Yep. How many people here feel like they have a voice in the direction their markets are moving when it comes to supporting the creative class? Whew.
Hold on. We asked that again.
How many people here feel like they have a voice in the direction their markets are moving when it comes to supporting the creative class? Okay. Thank you for taking the census.
Okay,
Dave.
it's all good. Bass player always has to wait for the solo. If you even get one. So, all good. I'm Dave Pomeroy. I am a bass player. And since 2009, I've been president of the Nashville Musicians Association, AFM Local 257. We really appreciate the opportunity to have been involved in the Greater Nashville Music Census, and I do want to express my appreciation and gratitude to everybody involved in this great collective effort. Communication and transparency are really important parts of any plan to move forward and make sure that the economic core of Music City, the creative community, is respected and protected. Nashville is a unique music community with a broad spectrum of job descriptions and opportunities that cannot be found anywhere else in the world. This is not an accident. We became Music City because of the organic ecosystem of mutual respect between employers and creatives that has evolved over the last 3/4 of a century. Nashville has always been diverse, musically and otherwise, and that is something that gets forgotten too often. I moved here 47 years ago knowing one person, just wanting to be in a band that people liked. I didn't know that there were any other jobs available in the music industry. I've been blessed to work with many of my heroes and have played on more than 500 albums and concert venues all over the world. All my dreams have come true and more than I ever could have imagined, and I'm very grateful. And that is why I got more and more involved in the Musicians Union and working together to solve problems that are creating major obstacles for music professionals in Nashville and beyond. One of the key elements to the issues that Nashville creatives face is the wide variety of ways in which they work and how they get paid. Whether someone is a songwriter, musician, vocalist, engineer, producer, or these days a combination of any or all of the above, we all have our own unique circumstances as regards compensation and expenses as well. Nashville is one of the last places where musicians can make a living doing what they love. We are no longer the hillbilly cousin of New York and LA. We have a higher amount of voluntary compliance with our agreements than any other local in the entire AFM. Why? Because employers have learned that it's just the right thing to do. The music business doesn't have to be a win-lose equation. It can be a win-win if everybody treats each other with respect. Despite Tennessee's right to work, or as we call it, right to work for less laws, musicians were paid more than $12 million through AFM Local 257 in 2023. Music business professionals are moving here from around the world for many reasons, including the lack of state income tax in Tennessee. As Nashville gradually developed into this worldwide music business hub, far beyond the country music genre, it's also become a major tourist destination. All these factors and more have raised the cost of living to the point where it is getting harder and harder for working musicians to survive. The Greater Nashville Music Census points this out very clearly And it gives us a chance to address these issues directly, and that process has already begun. Affordable housing, transportation, and parking issues are some of the biggest challenges musicians face, as you will hear. The Nashville real estate and rental market has exploded, which has forced many people to move further out of town, adding unpredictable driving times and high gas prices to the financial challenges musicians already face. Over the last 16 years, Local 257 has worked with Metro Nashville to legalize home recording studios, which were prohibited, creating musicians' loading zones on Broadway, fighting to keep the taxis from blocking the loading zones, and more. We've negotiated downtown parking discounts with various companies, all of this in order to try to help musicians save money, which translates into more take-home pay. In fact, the parking right outside, I just got 60% off. So it does add up. We get our members discounts on phone service, instrument insurance. We have a exclusive group insurance health plan, and every way we can find to save them money. We've also negotiated significant pay raises for musicians who work under our contracts, which include the Grand Ole Opry, CMA Music Fest, the Americana Awards, and much more. The results of this important survey shine a light on some of the unique challenges we face, but it also gives us an opportunity to find new ways to encourage and lift up creatives who are facing an increasing list of challenges, financial and otherwise, from technology and other issues. There are already new initiatives in the work that will create better transportation options for musicians. Now more than ever, we need to work together with Metro government, businesses, and community partners to ensure that we don't lose one of the key elements of made Nashville what it is today. That's why we're Music City. Take away the music and it's just city. We look forward to continuing to engage our community in every way possible and do all we can to promote respect, economic security, and a bright future for the place we all know and love. Thanks.
All right,
Questions?
Dave, you got me inspired, ready to rock. Now walk me through the slides you got in front of you there that talks about the records that we set during this census, because you described a lot of the details of why we are like no other, the anecdotes that we all feel every day, but we've got some pretty compelling data here that this census set records. And, just I probably skipped over it from the beginning, but for those that don't know, we conducted a music census in Nashville. We are one of 20 cities across the country that did so this year. We set records in the amount of participants of it. We spent the last 3 or 4 months dissecting that data, and that's how we got here and why we're talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. There were 4,256 respondents, which is the highest of any of these cities that were polled. And 31% of the folks were employed in the industry. The average annual music income, $52,000. Total annual income generated, $220 million. Average number of events per venue is 172, and the total number of events is over 25,000. And it's really hard to keep people's attention, and we worked really hard, a whole bunch of different entities reaching out to all their folks to get that number up to 4,000. It's no secret that there are more than 4,000 people in the music business in Nashville, but compared to every other city, we had significantly more, and I think these results have a lot of tangible value in terms of what do we need to do? How do we move forward? So many things have happened in the music industry that nobody could have predicted. I was sure CDs were going to last forever. So we've all had to learn how to adjust. And I think these days, people put together an income in more than one way for the most part. And I think it's understanding all these different silos and how we can help people be more efficient with what they make and hopefully what they spend as well.
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember or note here, right, is that all of those stats that Dave just ran through and that are up on that screen are new national records across all of the cities that were surveyed in this. So that's really a statement. We know anecdotally that we're Music City. We own the trademark, right? But is this still the place to play music and where the opportunities are? And that's what the census, we're going to talk about some negative things that a lot of people have been, ruminating over and complaining about recently for good reason. But there's still this city has unparalleled opportunities to create music or work in the music industry, unlike anywhere else, and the data really backed that up, which I think was an inspiring way to kind of approach this to start.
Comment from the venue guy, what, more venues per capita than New York City?
And Tokyo, right?
Tokyo?
6 times the amount.
6 times?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is good.
Yeah, and I think the participation too is important to note that the next highest number, I believe, was Austin, Texas in 2019 that surveyed, and they were at 2,500. So that shows the amount of people working in the music industry here. When they're the live music capital of the world, in that way. So I think that's it's inspiring. Any questions on the positive data here?
You guys doing any sort of comparison to that study that was done at the Chamber and Mayor's Office this year? That was that, workers and things like that. That was a different kind of study.
Yeah, so I think one of the big.
I'm going to repeat the question just in case.
Yeah, so he was asking if we did any comparisons between the data that the study that the Chamber did. So the Chamber has the music industry report, I believe it is, and I think it was 2020 was the last one. Yes, I think they do it every 5 years maybe. I think they got another one coming. And we have behind the scenes done a lot of comparisons here. And I think that it's really important to note that this music census, the Chamber's study, and the recent Nashville Independent Venue study are all pieces of a data puzzle that we can now put together and kind of Venn diagram over what each one's saying to find maybe the first solutions to tackle and the most important things that all of these things are overlapping with. So yes, and I think some of those things will come out in further slides here too.
Yeah, there was the original Music City Music Census had some big holes in it. It was back when they started the Music City Music Council, and I was on that, and we did this census, but they missed the live part of it was almost completely absent from that somehow. And so I have not seen the more recent Chamber of Commerce ones, and it was a Metro Nashville. I don't know can't remember if it was Chamber of Commerce or not, but I just remember we just sat there and poked holes in it, and I'm glad that there's been one since then, because this is so, it's really hard because so much comes down to the questions you ask in a census. It's not just, can you get people to answer it? You have to ask intelligent questions that give you the kind of results, and I think that there's a lot of really good information that came out of this. But again, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a process. It's not the end. It's great to have the results, but now we go try to fix those things that we've been able to identify. So I think it's good. I'll have to look at that newer one, but I remember the first music census I saw, it was like, are you kidding me?
And to add to that, the most recent one by the Chamber in 2020, it has some holes in it as well. The thing about this particular census that's different from a lot of the data that's been collected in the last probably 15, 20 years is that the coalition that was built to actually get the questions to the right people. And it was, how many organizations?
100, right, Jamie?
Yeah, over
around 100 total.
100 organizations, and none of the efforts prior to this had that many different organizations reaching out and pushing members of the community to participate. So
Yes, it was a grassroots effort,
Yeah.
right, which it was intentional, and we hope brought as many respondents from as many different little pockets in the, how many counties? 14 counties?
14.
All around, so a lot of places to get to. But just one last thing on your question, Jason. Our intent, we hope, would be to do this again in 3 years, for as long as we possibly can, because then we will really be able to kind of say, okay, where were we, in 24? Where are we in 27? So on and so forth. So that's where we hope to go.
I think it's also important to recognize that there was a lot of work to allow people to see themselves that they were part of the music industry that may not have connected with that before. Somebody may consider themselves a videographer, but if they spent most of their time, producing music videos, but if you ask them if they're in the music industry, they said no, and it's like, actually, you are doing it. Or a friend of mine who sews the scrim for the backhoe stage doesn't connect herself with the industry, but she is. And so we really try to push that message too, to get a wide variety of voices across the 14 counties to also identify the migration that is leaving Nashville because they can't afford. But I will not skip ahead.
Awesome. Any other questions on this before we kick forward on the next slide or next headline? Yeah. Yep. So they were one of our lead partners in the effort. Yep. And I think it's give a shout out to the lead partners. It was Tennessee Entertainment Commission, CMA's in the house, Visit Music City, Music Venue Alliance, Community Foundation. Belmont. Yep.
Musicians Union.
Yeah. Musicians Association. Exactly. So those people stepped up to both help spread the word and fund this. Though, to be honest, the funding of it is, when you compare it to other studies, this cost in the neighborhood of $25,000 to put together. Where if you look at the Imagine Nashville survey recently with a budget of $700,000 and brought 10,000 people. And so it's more people, but a lot more money to get. So that shows the grassroots effort of that it was really a census of the people for the people, spreading the word to kind of survey what, get a real temperature check, I think. Yeah.
Greensboro, North Carolina, we worked with Dawn.
Yep.
Did the census also.
Awesome.
And my question is, so we have a lot of lead partners that work together also, and it sounds like you guys all work somewhere different. So now that you have the information, where does it live that you guys are compiling this and moving forward? Like how?
Yeah. So.
I mean, it's available to the public, but how are you working together to use this information? Is there an entity that's holding this and steering it?
We'll get there. Yep. Yeah, that's definitely a big.
It's a great
big
question.
I'm going to try to answer your question at the end.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna go on to the next headline here. This All Music City, and I'll kick it to Eric to take this one.
All Music City. So this section deals with the diversity and opportunities where there's lacking from the census. Some of the insights that we're going to look at: representation across genres and genders is surprisingly strong, but still mostly white. Supporting data, country still leads the pack, but genre diversity is strong, and we'll talk about what that means. Some of the highlights: female representation in the census was really, really strong. We actually broke some records there. And the Nashville music ecosystem is predominantly white, but there are a lot of others represented. And this is the thing too about the census that it's a good time to talk about that. Whenever you take a census of any kind, it's not everybody. It's whoever participates, right? It's whoever participates. And I felt like we did a really good job of getting it out to a lot of different communities. But to some of the other points, some people actually might be in the music community, but don't think that that's their main thing. So they go, well, that's not for me. Or don't feel like the census or that this type of questioning is for them. And so it's interesting to see, again, how this is going to change as we continue to do the census over time, as people get more comfortable with information and what we do with the information, and they see how it helps the communities versus being threatened by how many questions was in this everything?
Well, it's been on the track you took, but I think so I don't know that we touched on that. You get to kind of pick a track in the beginning for anyone who hasn't taken this census themselves. So you can choose venue or presenter as a track, or creator or professional. Those are kind of your three options at the get-go, and then that determines which specified questions that you're going to get asked based on that. What was your question?
Like how many questions were?
It took me, so it's been on the track, but it took me about 20 minutes. I think the average was around 10 minutes to complete. So I don't know how many questions, but 10 minutes of investment of your time, which is a lot in this day and age, honestly, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So when you look at the next slide there, looking at country music being 28%, American roots being 16%, rock and pop, rock being 12%, and pop 8%. You don't see up there the gospel or Christian community being represented. You don't see rap or hip hop represented in there, or R&B. And when we look at some of the racial data, you can it possibly speaks to that as far as the participants when it breaks down on that side. And before we get to the gender, let's get to that slide actually. Looking at the race slide, it's 85% of the participants were Caucasian, but in Nashville, the general population is only 71% Caucasian. So, that's somewhat lopsided there. BIPOC, 6% participated, but we make up 14% of the greater overall population. So that's, again, something to understand as far as the representation. And then Hispanic, only 4% represented in the study, but 8% in the general population. So as we move forward in the next 3 years, hopefully when we're able to do this again, that those communities are communities that we're going to really try to drill down to get those numbers to be more representative, so we can possibly have different answers with different conclusions with this information. But one of the things that was interesting when you go back to the gender slide, female representation in the creative sector is very low. The industry and venue numbers hit a national high. So when we look at the track that Cobb mentioned, females on the venue track represented 50% of the participants. Females in the industry side, 55%. And then females on the creative side, 26%. The information and the data is interesting when it comes down to that, but most of us that work in the industry have seen positive changes when you look at female executives or non-male executives, and that trend in Nashville, I think, is still there. When you look at the amount of female leaders, record labels, and even promotions companies, it's increasing and consistently increasing, which is a great thing. When you look at how we can look at these opportunities, when we look at the lack of these numbers and the data, we look at it as opportunities. So there are a lot of national programs that are addressing diversity in music, the music industry, from the executive side and the creative side. Some of those programs are birthed out of Nashville. A few I would like to highlight: the On Ramp Academy of Country Music. They have a program that it's not just for BIPOC, but also females, both creatives and managers that want to be in the music industry. And that's in partnership with BMAC, the Black Music Action Coalition. And they've partnered with several other major industry entities like Live Nation. This last month, they started a partnership with Live Nation. It's a live accelerator. So they flew 28 BIPOC individuals out to LA for intensive 2-week training, and then they flew them back to their hometowns for paid internships in that space. And anybody that works in the space, the live promotion and marketing space, the Live Nation space, it's very white male. There aren't, even though they promote a lot of hip hop shows and all this, there are no black people. And they recognize that and trying to address that. There are several other programs. One that Dark Matter, the beloved venue here in Nashville, participated in. The Live Music Society is a nonprofit that actually contributes money to small live music venues across the country, and they want a grant to keep their doors open. And more recently, they've converted to a nonprofit, and even solutions like that matter. And finally, looking at the workforce, the workforce development opportunities, NEVA, the NEVA Foundation has a program called the Vox program, the venue operations program, where they bring students from all over the country. They have an online training, and then they have paid internships in the towns that they live in. And they're reaching out to other universities to try to expand that program. So there are some things moving in the industry that Nashville specifically participating in and even funding, but we just need to do more to hit the surrounding counties and to increase the efforts in diversity.
Thanks, Eric. Any questions on the kind of demographic breakdown portion of this census?
We got one back here.
I recall taking the census earlier this year, so I might remember this detail, but were like any like gender fluid or gender queer or non-binary people considered?
Yep, that data was collected as well. I think it was around 1%. So I will also flag that all of this data, we're kind of giving you the headlines here, but it is all available on our website. One of the things we love about this is sort of like open sourcing the data to the community. So we have a pretty awesome interactive data dashboard living on the website, so you can dive into all of that. And like we're touching on the genres, all of the other genres are included, but they were under 5%. So we kind of flagged the top 4 that struck us as, country's obviously still leading the pack, but there's a lot of genres catching up and representing some bigger portions of the pie than we might have expected. But yeah, that data's living in there. Like I said, there's other stories to tell, and we encourage you to kind of go and look through there and find those too. But that was definitely in there. And I think I'll just double down on, this opportunity for a workforce development program. We have some amazing universities here that are connecting students to the music industry. We have unparalleled opportunities here in Nashville, as the first part of the data showed, but we still have this clearly a large group of our underrepresented population don't feel like they have access, or there isn't access to these opportunities. So I think colleges and universities can play a great role in that.
And speaking to that, one of the stories I wanted to tell, I felt like I was getting a little long-winded, so I cut it out. But Nashville is more of a welcoming place for all genres than, in my opinion, than it's ever been. An example I like to give for that, there's a producer here. He's probably one of the top 10 hip hop producers in the world right now. His name's Tay Key. He attended MTSU. He's originally from Memphis, but attended MTSU. And there's this famous picture that's out there. At his graduation, he got a platinum plaque for producing one of Beyonce's songs. He's produced for Travis Scott, for Drake. He is, arguably probably top 10 hip hop producers. He chose to stay in Nashville after graduation. He built a studio. His business is ran out of this city, and it was a choice. He could have gone to New York. He could have gone to LA. He could have gone to Atlanta. He could have gone back to Memphis. But he chose to stay in Nashville. And when I've talked to him, what he said is that Nashville is an opportunity. And again, speaking to this data, because it doesn't mean it can't. And he's made a choice to stay here and bring artists and talent here. And a lot of big top line people come here to record for him, with him. And hopefully that continues. And he's still a very young man. He's not even, he's like 26. So he's not like, father of kids and things like that. He's just a young man getting it in, and he chose Nashville. So I think more people and some of these other genres that aren't represented well will continue to do that with that type of example.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that, Nashville was on the cutting edge of the civil rights movement back in the day with the Woolworths downtown and John Lewis, Rosa Parks. It's been suppressed and held under the radar for too long, and we have this opportunity. This is the other gentleman that lives here, Byron Chambers. They call him Mr. Talkbox. He played on Bruno Mars' Uptown Funk, and he said, when I got that first Sirius XM check from the AFM SAG After Fund, he goes, changed my life.
Yeah.
And it can happen. So, but again, I think it's up to us to pull the curtain up on ourselves, and just quit pretending that we're all the same when we're all different, and that's okay.
Yeah.
True. All right, I want to move on to this next section, unaffordable, which is, maybe our more depressing headline of the bunch. It's something we all know and feel daily. I'm going to take this one here. Some of the data, both quantitative and qualitative, highlighted what we all kind of feel every day, but an imminent affordability crisis for our music community and ecosystem here. The top quantitative concerns in the census were rising costs of living and stagnant pay rates. The top complaint, you had opportunities throughout the census to lend your voice through more of just writing how you feel about a particular section. That number one complaint across the board was parking costs and policies, which is a very specific one, but I think one that we all can resonate with very much so here in Nashville, and it's very complex. And then the affordability kind of lent to the migration we saw. We surveyed the 14 counties in and around Davidson, the Greater Nashville area, and we saw that 30% of the respondents live outside of Davidson County. So that's a larger chunk than we thought, but that's because they're able to plant roots and buy houses out there or afford rent. But it also lends importance to things like transit and parking costs. So knowing that people are coming in from a distance, how do we create solutions that take that into account? The opportunities here, I think, are plenty. One of the main things is we need more music-friendly policies. When you think, what is a music-friendly policy? It is a parking policy that accounts for the music industry. It is a tax incentive that supports or rewards the creation of a venue. When we approve new buildings in Nashville, there's a short list of development bonuses that developers can tap into to unlock more stories when they build. Right now, those things are make yourself LEED certified, have architectural excellence, have a certain amount of affordable housing. Why couldn't there have a music venue inside it at below market rate? Those are the kind of things, those are music-friendly policies that support and nurture, and frankly, we have next to none. So we have all the industry, but we haven't really activated on a local policy way. And I think we've noticed that the music industry as a whole for a long time has really only focused on national or federal policy because it directly impacts the bottom line, when you're lobbying for royalty rates. That's very clearly, you invest this in lobbying and you get this back if you win, right? It's been harder to say, hey, Nashville's losing its soul, that's going to affect your bottom line. And they're kind of like, yeah. But we saw that post-pandemic that started to shift. And I think the fact that we got 100 organizations part of this coalition is a statement that people are starting to see that. Another way we can battle affordability is through grants and direct support of venues, of performers, of promoters. We also lag behind in that. Other cities across the country have live music funds and support with direct grants to these people. We just created this past session the first statewide live music fund in the country here in Tennessee. It has no money in it yet, but it is an opportunity for us to rally together and bring this industry that has an economic impact of $15 billion to support this fund and support its independent venues, performers, promoters. That exists, and that directly, if you give a performer a $15,000 grant that can allow them to record a record, that record is going to likely be recorded here. The money stays in Nashville, and then that $15,000 could be used as a down payment on a house. And that directly impacts affordability. And then I mentioned already, but better transit options. I know we have this transit referendum up for vote this fall, and a lot of musicians don't even kind of realize what it is or what its impact will be. But it's really important. It's part of the puzzle. It's going to, the proposed bus routes in it will have 93% of the bus routes will have a stop within walking distance of an independent venue in Nashville. That's pretty important. They will have 24-hour service, which means fans, bands, venue workers can leave a gig and catch a bus home when they couldn't before because it ended too early. So these are things that are part of the puzzle. It doesn't solve the $50 parking problem, but it's part of the puzzle, and we need to tackle all parts of the puzzle in order to kind of move it forward, take the little wins. Any questions on that?
Nashville has an office of nightlife, I believe that's what it's called. I thought one of the interesting data points that y'all collected is, I think, 73% of the respondents want an advocate within local government. I'm kind of curious about your response to that number. Does that mean that people just don't know about the office or they don't feel it's effective? I know there's overlap with the airport, which seems not necessarily conducive to the office succeeding, because the office should be an advocate for the industry, the airport enforcement agency. I'm kind of curious about anyone's feedback.
Oh, I love that question. It is a brilliant question, and it is one that Chris is going to tackle very specifically in his section. So maybe
Okay,
we should
wait
put
for
a pin
that,
in it
yeah.
just for a minute, because Chris is going to bring us home with that. Because I think it's a very important question with important answers too. And I know it's connected, but he's going to dive into it too. So we'll just, if you don't mind. Okay, sit tight. Yeah, exactly. Any other affordability questions? Yeah.
On the parking privilege, you guys have, after you submitted that, saw the section of the complaint, has there been this sort of collective conversation with the trust community's office? Because obviously, those that don't, when they handed over the public part of parking to privatizing, now we're feeling the ripple effects of that decision, which I'm sure was, okay, I mean, I can say that it was short-sighted,
Yeah.
and, parking, just went through the other day, and it was $3, $31.50. That changed in 3 months.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, I know.
It is not a music-friendly policy.
Yeah. Well, I would just quickly say that Nashville's had a problem in the past of going outside of Nashville to solve Nashville problems rather than people who've come up through the community and understand some of the things that are unique. And that was a classic case of that. And they just sort of came in and laid down, ripped out the parking meters. And I got to give Jamie a lot of credit for being, and Chris as well. We just, from the moment that started, we started going down there and going, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing here? And it's a work in progress. But I think it's gotten better, and it's about to get a whole lot better.
Well, I think that ties in really well to the title of this panel, which is From Census to Solution. And everything we've done has been fairly strategic, and we thought parking was a great first thing to tackle from the census data to a solution. You might have noticed this summer we released the one data point, which was the number one complaint was parking, and that was to also put a little pressure on NDOT to say, hey, what are y'all doing? And since that time, when we released that data point, they changed from having a 3-hour max on street parking to now having a 10-hour max, because you couldn't park and go to a show. It was frankly ridiculous. They also made it so if you pay the max for 10 hours, you get 24 hours, so you can leave it overnight and don't drive home drunk, which was another concern of ours. Does it tackle all the problems? No, we've also proposed to them a 50% local discount on all street parking. That's been met very positively, but it hasn't happened yet. But that's where, and I think Chris will kind of take the reins on this, where when we come together and we can be a louder voice at the table in these scenarios. But this data has already started to move the needle. It's not all the way where we want it to be, and we know it's got to take a little inches at a time. But we would like to get there, and it's just, again, part of the puzzle. Like Chris, I don't know if you wanted to tack on anything there, but.
Did that answer your question, Jason? Kind of, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've been at NDOT for what, a year and a half, I think, collectively since it took effect, and I think it was past short-sighted, actually, and we can talk later if you want. I think Jamie's the expert on it, but probably some intentionality behind what happened at council with the changes that weren't supposed to happen and then did. 24-hour enforcement wasn't in the language, but then it happened. There were a couple of changes through the commission that took place after the bill passed, but yeah, we'll see. I think a lot of progress has been made in the last year and a half on parking, because it was really, really bad when it was rolled out, and we were basically told this works in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, exactly.
In our first meeting, so we're going to do it here, and so hopefully it keeps improving. It's I made a social media post about this about parking, and somebody was just tearing me up, like, if you believe a word NDOT says, you're a fool. And it's like, to Jamie's point, like, We have to, as a community, as a coalition, an association, whatever, it's going to take a lot of us to push back on some of the things that are negatively impacting so many of us. And we feel like this data is an incredible fact to bring to all these different conversations. All right, well, here's the facts. The out of 700 comments, 700 plus comments, the issue that was brought up the most in this census was parking. NDOT, your move.
Yeah.
And I think it's having that strategic solution ready with the data to back it up. Because if we're all just loud on social media, it tends to not go anywhere. They know that they can wait it out and we'll get bored or have a gig or get busy. But if we're all loud at the same time, at the same direction, with a solution that is reasonable, that can be done, you can make real change happen that way. And that's why we will continue to publicly press NDOT on a 50% local discount. And then if they don't respond, we will have a council member introduce it. And it'll probably happen that way. We'd like to maintain a relationship that's positive, but if it doesn't, then you make it happen. But that's the process with it, at least. All right, Kelly, let's go on to this next section, out of harmony, which focuses on the qualitative data from the census. Like Chris said, there was over 700 comments. I think 350 of them were related to parking. But there were a lot of comments that just touched on the sort of disharmony that we're feeling in Nashville, that's a sentiment that people talk about. And Kelly, I'll let you run with it from here, but it's important to listen to the voices that were said in this and react to them.
Hello. I'm just thinking about the parking situation, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I hail from Northeast Ohio, and a few years ago, after being here for more than 2 decades, I was up visiting family with my husband, and I looked at him, I said, "Have I ever taken you to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?" And he's like, "No," and I felt like I have failed him. And so I gathered some people, and I thought, I'm going to be the big baller here, and I'm going to pay for parking. And I went to go pay for parking, and it was $4 to park in Cleveland, Ohio for the entire day. And $32 for 2 hours the other night at a show I went to. Before I moved to Nashville, I was a talent buyer for a local venue, and I helped organize a festival up there. And I really felt like that was my calling. And I had a skeptical father who was like, "Why are you moving somewhere to work in the music industry?" And when I came and thought, what was it? I don't have a musical bone in my body, but when I think about what music has done for me since I was a little girl, roller skating in my parents' basement, listening to the Beatles on vinyl, all the different facets of music that brought me joy, it was because I wanted to do something to help to give back to the artists that made me feel that way at any time and any moment. And he wasn't sold on it, but I still fled and I came to Nashville. And I did what I came to do, and then I moved into the community space. And through that space, I've still been able to give back to the industry and music in a way that I never thought that I would. So working for the Community Foundation and this opportunity to come up and collaboration is huge for community, and we need to be convening and collaborating, but we also need to be hearing the voices of the people, because unless we hear the voices of the people, we don't really know if we're making the right decisions. I think about people who have sat around a table and constructed AI, artificial intelligence, and they're not really thinking about the people. They're thinking about who are the brains around the table that can bring it. And so what AI generates a lot of times isn't reflective of the people of our community. And so what I wanted to do here today is we did capture 700 comments across 14 different counties of Middle Tennessee. And I've enlisted my partners up here. We're gonna one by one read a couple of those comments so you can get a feel. And a lot of it's been reflected in what we're saying and what is gonna come when Chris Cobb gets up here and chats. So First of all, thank you, gentlemen, for being willing to be our community voices. I'm going to kick it off with this quote right here. There is a lack of structured development resources and a clear path for creators to build a sustainable business.
Networking is hard when clicks dominate the industry. Without connections, it's almost impossible to get meaningful gigs.
Public transit and affordable parking are essential to making the city more livable for musicians.
Rising rent prices are forcing musicians to move further away from the city, hurting their careers.
We need more venues and events that support diversity in music, especially for underrepresented communities.
Policies should be designed to nurture and protect Nashville's cultural heritage.
There's a lack of transparency in how opportunities are allocated, and it seems the same names always get chosen.
The city needs to prioritize affordable housing for its creative community if it wants to remain a cultural hub.
The mental health of artists is deteriorating because of the stress of making a living in Nashville.
There's very little communication and understanding between sectors of the music industry and local government. Transparency and partnership would be a catalyst for growth and a healthier environment.
Venues are disappearing, and the new ones popping up aren't affordable or accessible for musicians. It's just a very small sampling of what we heard. And I urge everybody in this room to not hear those quotes as complaints or gripes, but hear them as opportunities. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about what opportunities as a community we can do to help solve some of these problems and set up our current industry workers for success, but also pave the way for the future of the individuals that are going to be here working, breathing, thriving. We want the word thriving to come to the surface so we can continue to give back to those who are creating experiences for us that really hit us to our soul. So the main thing is we need to create strategic cross-sector partnerships to bridge Nashville's tourism industry with the diverse local music economy. One of the ways that we can do that, and not only in the tourism section, but with local government and the music industry, is to address the affordability issue in the infrastructure. One way maybe is subsidized housing for musicians, some joint initiatives that can offer some tax incentives. It benefits both music and tourism. We can create music-driven tourism experiences. I just asked today, are there still those boxes on the corners of the streets that play music when you pass them? Are they still there? Okay. That is one way that I have seen tourism lift up local music here when you walk by and you can hear some tunes. So I think that's really cool. But what are some more ways that we can integrate some more diverse music so those that are visiting and those that are here can enjoy that experience? Another opportunity is by partnering with local venues and artists to create curated tours that showcase not just the mainstream of what people see in Nashville, but also the indie and genre diverse music. I think that's really important. Something Eric talked about, we could support workforce development initiatives by partnering with local universities and businesses to build those programs and get a talent pipeline for the industry. The workforce needs to be highlighted to keep those career pathways for Nashvillians, whether it's Nashvillians that are new to the city or the ones that have been here. We cannot forget the people who have been here all this time. Everybody focuses on new Nashville. We need to support those who have lifted up this industry for all this time. JB, you talked about the Tennessee Live Music Fund. That is something that we can do to attract both public and private dollars. Being in the community foundation space and being in the role of philanthropy, there are generous people all over that want to protect this city. And it could be somebody who has $5 at times of a local disaster. Those $5 gifts, they add up. when you have 11,000 people donating. But we also have individuals that have somehow launched into their career and they are ensuring $1 per ticket at every one of their concerts is going into a fund that helps go back out and support local nonprofits like Music Cares that are providing healthcare and opportunities to support the industry. So I think that we really need to think about this, how we're going to fund the Tennessee Live Music Fund, so that the way that Community Foundation works, we're not able to give those dollars to individuals. It needs to be to organizations that are supporting the individuals. We need to support this Tennessee Live Music Fund so individuals can apply for funding, receive funding to get them. And we saw a lot of examples of that during COVID in the pandemic, in the hospitality industry. We were able to get some bridge gap dollars for that. So let's work together and think through how we can fund that. We need to advocate for metro funding and policy reform. These partnerships with local governments and advocacy groups can help create these supportive policies that are going to help industry. What I think Sacramento was part of this cohort for this survey that we're doing. And one of the things that they were able to do was real low-hanging fruit. Like, we feel like parking might, that's a low-hanging fruit that we can work towards right now. Sacramento, they were able to take out some of the red tape for people who wanted to get permits to be able to host live music experiences. They don't have to talk to 4 different people at the city to get to the point where they need to be. It's one dedicated place. It's an online portal, fill out. These are the types of things that people are asking for. They want to see support and know how to be able to drive this type of industry forward. And then lastly, co-host community engagement events. This is the perfect example of it. How can we take a panel like this and continue to talk about it so it's not something that, a thing that you hear a lot in Music City is, oh no, another survey. There's all these surveys out there. What are they going to do with it? Well, let's work together and have events and come up with solution as community members, so people don't look at this music census like it's just another survey. Because we have heard from the people, 4,200, we know there's so many more individuals out there. What can we do to come together? Because if you live in Nashville, you have seen Nashville come together over and over and over again to support each other. We have had an unprecedented number of disasters in the last 4 years. And I'll tell you, the t-shirt makers, the artists, the venue owners, they are willing to open up the doors, provide the entertainment, and bring people into the space in order to raise money to get people back on their feet again. And if they're willing to do that for us, we need to be willing to do that for them when they're facing hard times and trying to fill the gaps. Are there any questions? Get off my soapbox.
All right, well, I think we're over time, but we got our closer coming in who's going to bring us home with the kind of final headline here, a seat at the table. Chris, tell us why we don't have one, why we need one.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I'll be quick so we can all get out of here and go see some more music. So this slide is a seat at the table. The insight here, the kind of the headline, right, is that while we have all these great numbers, these record-setting numbers here in Nashville, we're underrepresented. Like, how is this so? The data that supports this insight. I'm gonna kind of focus on this one that Julia, I think you asked a question potentially about. Like 73% of the venue presenter respondents to the surveys said that they seek an advocate inside local government. And I think an interesting component to this really high percentage, 73%, right, is that they have that advocate here. There's been a lot of progress made in representation in government in both Metro Nashville and the state of Tennessee since COVID. I think she left, but someone mentioned the Music, Film, and Entertainment. Someone mentioned the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, which now has a music office. that's just over a year old. So our state has a music office finally. The state of Tennessee has a music office. It's one of a handful in the country. So that's great, right? We're moving in the right direction there. At the metro level, we have a Music, Film, and Entertainment Commission, which Dave is on, which is
Just slowly but surely making its way through all the red tape so we can actually hire somebody. We're almost there. It's only taken a year.
yeah, but
But it's moving. It's moving in the right direction, and the fact that it even exists is really good.
it's moving a year in, but but it's moving. And then specifically to this kind of advocate, I suppose, we have a Office of Nightlife here in Nashville, inside the mayor's office. That director, his name is Benton McDonough. But please correct me on your question, but I think you asked, is that associated with the beer board? Was that the question? Right. So it is the answer. And I think procedurally what happened here is our previous mayor, Cooper, said that we were going to have this office, but it wasn't in the budget. And so what finance department decided to do was take an existing director and give them a new title. We've seen it in other cities, similarly, where an agency that is responsible for, at the end of the day, basically fining businesses somehow is also set up to be their liaison with local government. And it doesn't make sense. And that is where we are today in Nashville to some extent. Please don't misquote me. I'm not saying that, that's happening. I think the intention is really good. But I think the data says that, we want an advocate. Well, the city's saying you have one, but 73% of the respondents are saying we want one. So what is going on there, right? Do they feel like they don't have an advocate? Do they not know that office exists? We don't know. The data doesn't tell us, but it's an interesting question to ask.
It is a little tricky because it's essentially a day job and a night job with the same person with, potentially conflicting clients. But it's, again, I think the intent was good, but it's been a little, there's been a couple of hiccups, but that's how we keep breathing.
And money's probably a part of it, just like the commission, Dave, right? Funding is always an issue. So getting money earmarked in the metro budget to ensure that the commissions and departments can hire the people that they need, can have the staffs that they need to exist. I think I'm going to go ahead and say that's probably part of the reason that we have this high number of 73% of people don't know it exists, because it doesn't even have a website at this point, because it doesn't have a budget. So an opportunity to our slide, right, that's a great opportunity. We can work together to advocate for funding for the commission, for the Office of Nightlife, so on and so forth, so that they can do the jobs that they need to do. Greensboro, your question was, what are we going to do with all this? Is that right?
Well, we have the same information.
Yep.
We have sort of the same group of people who help bring it to life. So now there is a live, and how do we create, you may have a music office in your city. You just got we just got a music office in the state of North Carolina. It's brand new. And I think Charlotte has also done a census.
They did.
With Dawn also.
That's right.
So how do you take this information, have a central location, like you're driving these solutions and these opportunities, but who's doing it?
Sure.
Like if you were redoing this, I know you said the Office of Night, you don't feel like it's an advocate. If you could dream it up from a perfect, like if none of that existed and you were starting fresh, like we are, like how would you do it?
Those?
I think having working with the state, the state has a music person. I think finding a subdivision of that concentrates on, the creative side of things, because, the Office of Nightlife, the nightmare, which could be taken several ways. It's an attempt to and the more we communicate, the better it gets. And like they've been showing up at some of these events and they're listening. So, that's a start. But I would say if you can keep someone focused on the creative side of it, the economic stuff, work with the Chamber of Commerce, whatever. But I mean, something and North Carolina is an amazing musical center. You know, I mean, from one side to the other, there's a lot of great music there. But I think having something at the state level and maybe, you know, accessing that and seeing if you can create some sort of a subdivision might be.
It's,
Like, you
it,
don't have a city music office, like in Nashville?
well,
Well, this music, film, and entertainment is a Metro Nashville thing. Because we don't have that kind of thing on the state level. The Tennessee Entertainment Commission has Nashville has a problem because the rest of Tennessee gets jealous of us sometimes in terms of funding and making money and all. So it is a little tricky there, but I think there's, I don't know. I don't want to go on.
I think there's a lot of experts on these subjects that know more than me. So Don's a great guy to keep talking to. I would say you need four things. You need an office. The office needs to exist, probably inside your mayor's office. Again, other people are going to think differently. You also need potentially a commission, which is a group of appointees and or volunteers who actually know what they're talking about. Because they're experts in the field that can help inform the office. You need advocates. You need citizens who are willing to raise their voices. So oftentimes, our government official, our guy in the office, he needs someone to yell and scream, so that he can go, to his bosses and say, look, this is what the community wants, and then I'm going to try to bring us home here.
And have some benefactors, people who are willing to contribute to that and make it happen. But just to quickly finish my thought about the commission, once we get in place, the goal of this commission since day one has just been to facilitate better communication between all of the different elements of the industry. So if somebody wants to come to a TV show, it facilitates conversation between the stagehand union and everything else, and just trying to coordinate and streamline the process because they have to start with scratch with all the different food groups. So that's really the goal of this thing eventually, and we are going to get there. We're just still on the driveway, getting ready to leave the house.
The fourth one that I would say that, you guys may or may not need, I don't know, but we need it here. And this, I think, answers the original question, maybe, like, where does this live? Where does it go from here? It is open source. It lives with all of us, but that doesn't really help us go anywhere, right? Ultimately. So I think what we need in Nashville today is an actual association. And we're looking at this census as the beginning of a coalition. We have these 10 lead partners who put in money. We have these 90 other community partners who've supported this effort, who participated in this effort. We have 4,200 respondents. And so I think us as the steering committee and the lead partners feel like what we're doing is now organically creating a coalition that can hopefully, within a year's time, form an actual association with funding. And that would be kind of the fourth part that I think at least we here in Nashville need to take these opportunities and create real change so that when we do this again in 3 years, we can say, look, it's working.
Yeah, I think every city is a little unique, and if you have a ton of buy-in from your mayor's office and city council, you may not need the presence of an association. If you have less buy-in, then you need someone demanding that seat at the table so that you're baked into planning, that you're baked into tax incentives, things like that. Some cities are doing it because they're leading the way on it. Austin's been leading the way on that for a decade, right? But they also have some associations too that keep people in check. And Chris didn't mention it, but out of our 40 Metro Council members, we arguably have one that comes from the music industry. And they're not even active in the music industry. They used to work in the music industry. And so that's a problem because we roughly account for 15% of Nashville's population, which would be 7 council members. So that's on us, right? We haven't been organized. We don't have an association to lift up and elect somebody and push them forward. But I think that's where we're at the start of now, so that we can kind of demand that. And I think that is also one of the top recommendations of the Nashville Independent Venues Study. Jason, you mentioned that in the beginning, where the Venn diagrams overlap is this need for an association, a coalition of some sort. And we have a loose one, but we need to formalize that.
for anyone in the audience, sorry, Eric, who's thinking about these things like y'all are, that independent venue study is a good read, and you can Google that and download that. It's long, but it's a really good read.
And that study also suggests that a coalition of some type needs to be developed to continue the voice. And I'll say this is kind of an unsaid thing. I mean, it's somewhat obvious, but for you all, something to really consider. You know, Nashville has been a quote unquote music city for a very long time. The financial gains from that identity are more realized now than ever. And so whenever you infuse money in corporate interest, a lot of times it conflicts with the organic, authentic efforts in a scene with an art like music. And so you say, well, what would you do, starting from scratch? Get a hold of it now before the big corporate piece comes in, because it's much, much harder to undo those fists, and money is in the game. And I think that's what we've seen in our community for the most part.
Yeah, and I know we're way over time. We could talk later, but
Yeah.
if we could turn back the clock and and get to planning department, when the last master plan was updated, and say, hey, here's 5 neighborhoods that are cultural hubs in our city. Let's not allow those to go to maximum height in the code in the next 5 years. We would probably have a very different Nashville today.
So just to recap, yeah, please.
How do you get involved with you guys, help you push, get those diversity numbers and all that?
Love that question. Thank you.
Good question. So yeah, like we said, we have this sort of informal coalition that is formed around this. I don't know if you took the census or signed up to stay involved, but if you go to musiccitycensus.com or follow the QR code and sign up to stay involved, it will put you in our database, which we will for now we've been sending out the results, but moving forward, when there are opportunities to activate as a community and say, hey, let's get behind transit, or hey, let's get behind this parking, or hey, we're going to have a community engagement session on workforce development to get the diversity numbers up, that people can respond, get involved, show up in that way, because it'll be very specific to ways you can actively get involved and make a difference that way. So I think that's the key. And then invite a few other people to see it too. I saw some folks taking photos. Just so you know, we tried to put this out there in every possible form and fashion. So we have the video, we have this presentation, we have social media infographics that are shareable, and all have all of this information on there. So if you go to the census website results, all of that's there. You can download it, share it away, and start spreading the word. Awesome. Thanks everybody for your time. Thanks to the panelists.
Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you all. Thanks for caring.
And you can find if you want to know anything about the Musicians Union, we're at nashvillemusicians.org.